A little girl climbed onto the wet roof of her Portland home, clutching her loyal German shepherd as the rain soaked her tangled hair. Her cries cut through the quiet street. "My mom is in the chimney!" At first, neighbors thought it was a child's wild imagination, but the fear in her voice told a different story, one that would expose a terrible secret hidden within the walls of her own house. What followed would test courage, reveal betrayal, and remind us of the miracles love can bring. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments so we can see how far this story travels. And if you believe no child should ever have to scream to be heard, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see the world. The city of Portland, Oregon, sat wrapped in a winter drizzle that never seemed to stop. The sky hung low, a heavy quilt of gray, and the air smelled faintly of wet pavement and pine. In the Miller household, the windows fogged from the damp air outside, there was a silence that had become the rhythm of their lives. Rain tapped gently against the glass as though the world outside were trying to enter, but inside there was only the weight of grief, heavy and unrelenting. It had been weeks since Michael Miller, husband and father, was taken from them in a sudden car accident on the I-5 highway. The shock had not yet dulled, and for Anna Miller, life had narrowed to quiet routines and hollow gestures. Anna Miller was 34 years old, slender and graceful in a way that once made her seem younger than her years, but grief had etched lines at the corners of her green eyes and drained the color from her fair cheeks. Her long brown hair, often tied into a loose bun, framed a face that had once radiated warmth, but now carried the stillness of someone walking through fog. She had been the kind of woman who remembered neighbors' birthdays, who baked cookies for Sophia's classmates, who made strangers at the grocery store feel like friends. But Michael's sudden death had shaken her faith in the order of the world. She moved through the house like someone underwater, slow, hesitant, afraid that the next step would bring another collapse. Her daughter, Sophia Miller, was 9 years old. The little girl had once been lively, with a bubbling laugh that seemed to fill every corner of the house. Now she seemed fragile, too thin for her age, her shoulders slightly hunched as if she carried more weight than she should. Her long brown hair was often tangled, her blue eyes large and luminous but dulled with sadness. She spoke less and less, sometimes answering her mother only with a shrug, sometimes not at all. She had developed the habit of curling up beside the family dog, Max, as though the German shepherd's warmth could shield her from the strange emptiness that filled their home. Sophia, despite her small frame, was perceptive. She noticed the heaviness in her mother's step, the way Anna stared at her husband's photograph, the way she sometimes cried silently in the kitchen late at night. She kept these observations inside, writing them down occasionally in the little purple notebook she hid under her pillow. It was easier to confide in Max, who listened with unwavering amber eyes. Max was 5 years old, a German shepherd with a strong, muscular frame and a thick coat of black and tan fur. His ears were always upright, and his tail carried the kind of authority that matched his protective instincts. He had belonged to Michael first. Michael had trained him himself, teaching him commands and turning him into more than just a pet, but a guardian. When Michael died, Max seemed to feel the absence more than most. He paced the house at night, lay in front of the bedroom door, and barked at shadows as if expecting Michael to walk in again. But around Sophia, his demeanor softened. He rested his head on her lap when she cried, followed her through every room, and seemed to sense her unease in ways no human could. To Sophia, Max was more than a dog. He was her confidant, her protector, her silent friend. The house itself carried the scent of Michael everywhere. His baseball cap still hung on the hook by the door, his toolbox remained under the counter, and his photograph sat on the mantel, smiling as though he might return any moment. Anna often caught herself glancing at the picture while preparing meals, her heart tightening with the realization that she would never again hear his laugh echo through the hallway. That evening, as rain pattered against the window, she placed a simple sandwich on the kitchen table. "Sophia," she said softly, her voice weary, "please eat something." But the girl shook her head, eyes glued to the television where an old cartoon flickered soundlessly. Anna pushed the plate closer, her hand trembling. "You have to eat, sweetheart. Just a little." The doorbell rang, interrupting the heavy silence. Anna wiped her hands on a dish towel and walked slowly to the front door. Standing there was Ryan Carter, Michael's best friend. Ryan was 36 years old, tall with a sturdy build that came from years of working in construction. His hair was dark blonde, cropped short, and he had a clean-shaven face that carried a confidence some found reassuring. His gray eyes often softened when he spoke, though at times they carried an intensity that unsettled people without them knowing why. Ryan had been close to Michael since college. They had been roommates, teammates on the baseball field, and companions through late-night poker games. To Anna, Ryan had always seemed loyal, someone she could count on if things went wrong. Since Michael's death, Ryan had shown up often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with tools to fix a leaky faucet. He had a way of stepping inside without waiting for an invitation, filling the silence with his booming laugh or gentle reminders of better days. That night, he held a paper bag that smelled of garlic and herbs. "I know this probably isn't a good time," Ryan said softly, his voice tinged with concern, "but I thought you two could use a hot meal." Without waiting for Anna's response, he stepped inside, his boots squeaking slightly against the wet floor. He moved into the kitchen with the confidence of someone who belonged, pulling out containers of steaming food. "It's an Italian stew," he announced, smiling. "Michael used to beg me to teach him the recipe. He always said nothing hit the spot like this after a long day." Anna's eyes flickered at the mention of her husband, her heart squeezing tight. She watched the steam rise, the aroma awakening a long-lost hunger in her chest. "Thank you, Ryan," she said quietly. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he interrupted gently, his tone firm. "Michael was my brother." "Looking after you two is the least I can do," Ryan served Sophia a small bowl, crouching to meet her eyes. "Come on, champ," he said with a grin. "Give it a try. I guarantee it'll give you extra power for your fastball." Sophia hesitated, glancing at her mother. Anna gave a faint nod, and reluctantly the girl picked up her fork. It was the first real meal she had eaten in weeks. For a moment there was a fragile sense of normalcy in the kitchen. Ryan filled the silence with stories about Michael's funny memories of fishing trips, late-night card games, small details that made Anna smile faintly through her grief. Sophia listened quietly, spooning stew into her mouth while Max lay at her feet, his eyes never leaving Ryan. Days passed, and Ryan's presence became routine. Each evening he arrived with another dish: chicken soup on rainy days, pasta on Sundays, baked bread that filled the house with warmth. He repaired the dripping faucet, replaced light bulbs, and even mowed the lawn. To Anna, his help was a relief. To Sophia, it was a disruption. The little girl grew uneasy with how naturally Ryan slipped into their lives, how he placed his hand on her mother's shoulder, how he spoke of Michael in the past tense with such ease. Max seemed to share her unease. He barked more often when Ryan entered, stood protectively in front of Sophia, and sometimes refused to leave her side when Ryan lingered too close to Anna. One evening, as rain hammered harder than usual, Ryan arrived carrying a pot of soup. He placed it on the counter and laughed. "Michael used to joke my soup could cure anything," he said, ladling portions into bowls. "A cold, a broken heart, you name it." Anna smiled faintly, exhaustion clear in her eyes. "As long as Sophia eats a little, I'm grateful." Ryan sat back, satisfied, watching as Sophia reluctantly ate. Later, as he left for the night, Max followed him to the door, hackles raised, growling low. "What's wrong with your dog?" Ryan muttered, half amused, half irritated. Anna hushed Max quickly, pulling him back, embarrassed. But Sophia noticed the way Max's body stiffened, the way his amber eyes locked on Ryan's face as if reading something hidden beneath the smile. She placed her small hand on his neck, whispering into his ear when Ryan was gone. "I trust you, Max. You know better than I do." In the days that followed, Sophia grew more withdrawn, hiding behind Max whenever Ryan entered the room. Anna, overwhelmed with grief and exhaustion, saw Ryan's help as salvation. But Sophia and Max saw something else, something they could not yet name, but felt deep in their bones. And on one quiet evening, when Ryan stepped into the house and Max barked ferociously, standing squarely between him and Sophia, Anna froze in confusion. She looked at her daughter clinging to the dog, then at Ryan's startled face, and wondered for the first time whether Max's instincts were warning them of something she could not yet see. The rain did not stop in Portland. It became a constant presence, misting over the hills, softening the outlines of the streets and leaving the rooftops glistening under the dim winter light. Inside the Miller home, the drizzle against the windows had become almost like a metronome, marking time in a life that no longer followed ordinary rhythms. Anna found herself leaning into the routine Ryan was building for them. His footsteps on the porch, the smell of food he carried, the sound of his voice filling the silence, it was all beginning to feel inevitable. She told herself she was grateful, though part of her heart whispered that she was simply too tired to resist. Sophia, on the other hand, felt the walls of her world shifting. Max no longer treated Ryan as a visitor. Every time Ryan entered, Max stiffened, hackles rising along his back, his amber eyes following the man's every move. Anna would scold him lightly, urging Sophia to hold him back, but the girl felt safer with the German shepherd pressed against her legs. She began to notice small things her mother seemed blind to: the way Ryan never knocked before entering, the way his hand lingered too long on the back of Anna's chair, the way his eyes scanned the room as though he were taking inventory of a home that wasn't his. One afternoon, Ryan arrived earlier than usual, carrying a toolbox instead of groceries. He shook the rain off his jacket and smiled. "That dripping faucet is driving me crazy," he said with an easy grin. "Let me take a look." Anna protested weakly that he didn't need to, but his hands were already moving, confident and unhurried, as though the kitchen were his own. Sophia watched from the hallway, arms folded, Max at her side. Ryan replaced a washer, tightened the handles, and then began moving about the house, fixing small things: light bulbs, squeaky hinges, even a loose step on the porch. "Michael would have hated leaving things broken," he remarked casually. "I'm just helping him keep up with the house." Sophia wanted to say something, to remind him that Michael was gone, that this was not his responsibility. But Anna's face showed relief for the first time in weeks, and Sophia swallowed her words. That night, as Ryan left, Anna whispered, "He's been so kind. Maybe we should trust him more." Sophia didn't answer. She bent down to hug Max instead, whispering in his ear, "Don't let him take Dad's place." The days that followed grew heavier. Ryan's visits turned into stays. Sometimes he lingered late into the evening. Sometimes he appeared first thing in the morning with coffee and bagels. Anna began leaning on him for everything: rides to the grocery store, help with bills, someone to carry the weight of decisions she no longer felt strong enough to make. Sophia's world shrank to the space she could share with Max. It was on a Thursday evening when Ryan first suggested the unthinkable. Dinner plates still sat on the table, and Sophia was coloring quietly in the corner, Max's head resting on her feet. Ryan cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice calm but deliberate. "This coming and going every day, it's not practical. You and Sophia are here in this big house, alone most of the time. You need someone around." Anna looked at him, uncertain. "What are you saying?" Ryan leaned forward, his hands folded. "I'm saying I should move in. It makes sense. I can take care of the house, help Sophia with her homework, keep you both safe, just until you're back on your feet." The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. Anna's breath caught. "Ryan, I couldn't ask that of you," he smiled reassuringly. "You're not asking. I'm offering. Michael would want this. He would want me to take care of you both." At the mention of her late husband's name, Anna's eyes filled with tears. Exhaustion and loneliness pressed down on her shoulders, and she found herself nodding faintly. Sophia's crayon snapped in half in her hand. She looked up, her face pale. She wanted to scream, but the words stuck in her throat. Max's ears shot up, his body tense, a low growl rumbling in his chest. That night, Sophia curled into bed with Max pressed against her side. She whispered into his fur, "We can't let him take Mom away from us." Max huffed softly, as if in agreement, his warm body anchoring her through the storm of change. The following morning, Ryan arrived with 2 suitcases. He set them by the door as though the decision had already been made. Anna hovered in the kitchen, wringing her hands, torn between gratitude and unease. Sophia sat on the stairs, staring at the bags as though they were invaders. She wasn't the only one who noticed. Their neighbor, Mrs. Ellen Parker, happened to walk by on her way back from the corner store. Ellen was a widow in her late 50s, a woman with short silver hair and sharp gray eyes who had lived on the street for decades. She had a reputation for noticing everything that happened in the neighborhood. She stopped, adjusting the scarf around her neck, and gave a little wave. "Morning, Anna," Ellen called cheerfully, though her eyes flicked to the suitcases. "Company staying a while?" Anna forced a smile. "Oh, it's just Ryan. He's helping us out." Ellen nodded slowly. "That's good. Nice to have help." but her eyes lingered on Ryan, measuring him with a look that suggested she was not easily fooled. She was a woman who had raised 3 children alone after her husband's sudden death, and life had taught her to read people quickly. Something in Ryan's easy confidence made her lips press into a thin line. After Ellen walked away, Sophia whispered to Max, "She knows something's wrong." The dog whined softly, his gaze fixed on the door where Ryan's bag still stood. Inside, Ryan had already made himself comfortable. He moved his bags into the spare room, whistling as though he were at home. He unpacked his clothes, placed his toiletries in the bathroom, and even reorganized a few kitchen cabinets. Anna stood by uncertainly, not knowing how to push back without seeming ungrateful. Sophia retreated to her room, where she pulled out her purple notebook and began writing furiously. She recorded every detail, the bags, the way Ryan smiled when he caught her watching, the look in her mother's eyes when she gave in. She wrote as though each word might one day become evidence. That evening, Ryan cooked dinner himself. He prepared pasta, humming as he moved around the kitchen, filling the space with his presence. He poured Anna a glass of wine, joked with forced cheer, and served Sophia a plate she barely touched. Max lay under the table, his eyes locked on Ryan, his body taut with silent tension. Ryan reached down once to pat him, but Max bared his teeth, a low growl vibrating in the air. Ryan pulled his hand back quickly, muttering, "That dog needs discipline." Sophia shoved her chair back, hugging Max's neck. "He doesn't like you," she said bluntly. Ryan forced a smile, but his eyes narrowed, a shadow flickering across his expression before it was gone. Later that night, when Sophia was in bed, Anna sat with Ryan in the living room. He leaned close, his voice low. "I know this is hard, but you'll see, it's better this way. I'll take care of everything." Anna nodded weakly, too drained to argue. Upstairs, Sophia pressed her face into Max's fur, listening to the muffled sound of Ryan's laughter drifting through the floorboards. She whispered, "He's not Dad. He'll never be Dad." And as the rain drummed against the windows and the city settled into night, Max lifted his head, ears pricked, as though he sensed something the others could not. He stayed awake long after Sophia had fallen asleep, a silent sentinel in a house that no longer felt safe. The next week arrived with a break in the rain, but the sunlight in Portland felt cold and thin, as though it had forgotten how to warm. For a moment, the Miller house seemed brighter, but inside, the shadows had already thickened. Ryan Carter was no longer a visitor. He was part of the fabric of the home. His shoes rested neatly by the door, his shaving kit sat in the bathroom cabinet, and his voice echoed through the hallways with the tone of someone who had claimed ownership. Anna tried to adjust, convincing herself that his presence was a blessing. He made coffee in the mornings, folded laundry, and carried groceries from the car. She told herself this was what Michael would have wanted, that his best friend was stepping up in his absence. But a quiet guilt gnawed at her, because every time Ryan sat at Michael's seat at the table, or whistled as he shaved in the bathroom Michael once used, something inside her recoiled. For Sophia, the change was unbearable. The 9-year-old girl had grown quieter, keeping her notebook hidden beneath her mattress, scribbling down moments that felt important. She described the look in Ryan's eyes when he told her mother what to wear before leaving the house, the way he corrected Anna in small, humiliating ways, and the way he ignored Sophia unless it was to issue an order. She described how Max seemed to track Ryan's every move, his amber eyes sharp, his body always between Sophia and the man. One morning, as Sophia prepared for school, Ryan intercepted her by the door. "Where's your homework?" he asked in a flat tone. Sophia clutched her backpack. "It's in here." He held out his hand. "Show me." The girl hesitated, her blue eyes darting to her mother. Anna, standing at the counter, gave a nervous smile. "Ryan, she has to go. She'll be late." Ryan lowered his hand but leaned down to Sophia's level, his gaze hard. "Don't lie to me." "I'll be checking tonight." Sophia's stomach tightened. Max growled softly, pressing his nose against her hand in reassurance. That day at school, Sophia's teacher, Ms. Rachel Green, noticed the change. Ms. Green was in her early 40s, tall and lean with auburn hair tied in a ponytail, and she had the warm, no-nonsense demeanor of someone who truly cared about her students. She wore glasses perched on the end of her nose, and her classroom was always filled with plants and colorful posters. She had taught long enough to recognize when something was wrong. Sophia had always been quiet, but now her silence felt heavier, her drawings darker. During recess, Miss Green sat beside her on the bench. "Sophia, are you all right?" she asked gently. The little girl shrugged, eyes downcast. Max wasn't there to nudge her toward safety. Ms. Green placed a hand on her shoulder. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. You don't have to be alone. Sophia gave the faintest nod but said nothing. She didn't know how to explain the monster living in her home. That evening, at dinner, the mask slipped. Anna had set the table, placing pasta and salad out. Sophia reached for her cup of juice, but her hand trembled, spilling liquid across the table. The glass rolled and clattered to the floor. I'm sorry, she whispered quickly. Ryan's face darkened. He shot to his feet, his voice sharp. Look what you did. Always making a mess. Can't you do anything right? Sophia froze, tears welling in her eyes. Anna rushed to grab a cloth. Ryan, it was just an accident. He turned on her, eyes cold. That's the problem. You coddle her. Michael coddled her. No discipline. Anna's hands shook. Don't talk about Michael like that, she whispered. Ryan sneered. I'm the one keeping his family together. Don't you dare tell me what I can or can't say. Sophia clutched Max's fur under the table, trembling. The dog rose, standing squarely between her and Ryan, teeth bared. For a tense moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then Ryan let out a humorless laugh. See? Even the dog thinks he runs this house. He dropped back into his chair, but the menace lingered in his eyes. That night, Sophia lay in bed with Max beside her, listening to the muffled sounds of an argument from her mother's room. She pressed her pillow over her ears, but she could still hear Ryan's voice, low and guttural, and her mother's sobs. Please, don't say that, Anna's voice broke through. Don't scare her. Then silence. Sophia pulled Max closer, whispering, Don't let him hurt her. The dog licked her cheek softly, his steady breathing her only comfort. The days grew worse. Ryan controlled who Anna could talk to, what shows they watched on television, even what meals they ate. He told Sophia when to go to bed, when to do her homework, and scolded her for playing too loudly. Max began to growl more often, once even planting himself in front of Sophia's bedroom door when Ryan tried to enter without knocking. Ryan muttered about training the dog properly, but Anna begged him not to. Then came the noises. It started one stormy night as Sophia sat on the rug with Max, coloring in her notebook. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows. But through the noise, Sophia heard something else. A faint, irregular sound, almost like scratching, coming from the sealed fireplace in the living room. She tilted her head, holding her breath. Max's ears shot up, his body stiffening. The sound came again, a low, almost imperceptible moan, like someone in pain. Max, she whispered, pressing her ear to the cold bricks. Her heart pounded. It wasn't mice. It wasn't the wind. She pulled back quickly as Ryan entered the room, his voice too cheerful. What are you doing, Sophia? She shook her head. Nothing. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Stay away from the fireplace. It's old, dangerous. You hear me? She nodded quickly, clutching Max. As Ryan walked away, Max growled under his breath. That night, Sophia could not sleep. She lay awake listening, waiting. The noises came again. Scratches, muffled breathing, a faint cough. She sat up, trembling, clutching her notebook, wanting to write it down but too scared to move. She finally whispered into Max's ear, There's someone in there. I know it. The next morning, Sophia tried to tell her mother. Mom, I think there's something in the fireplace. Anna looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed from another sleepless night. She touched her daughter's cheek. Sweetheart, it's probably just the wind or old pipes. But Sophia shook her head vigorously. No, I heard it. Max heard it too. Anna forced a smile, though unease flickered in her eyes. Let's not talk about this now. Ryan entered the kitchen at that moment, and Anna fell silent. Sophia realized she couldn't trust anyone except Max. That evening, when Ryan left for an errand, Sophia pressed her ear to the bricks again. This time, she swore she heard a whisper, a weak, broken sound that might have been a word. She staggered back, her notebook clattering to the floor. Max pressed his head against her leg, whining softly. Sophia knelt beside him, tears streaking down her face. It's Mom, isn't it? He's hurting her. He's hiding her. And though the truth was still hidden, the seed of terror had been planted. The days after Sophia first heard the whispers in the fireplace were unbearable. She could no longer sit in the living room without her skin prickling, waiting for the faint scrape or muffled cough. Max always seemed to hear it before she did, his ears flicking up, his body tense, his growl low and steady. Sophia tried once more to tell her mother, but Anna only shook her head with hollow eyes, whispering, "Please, Sophia, don't upset him. It will only make things worse." Those words told Sophia everything. Her mother was terrified too. Ryan's presence grew heavier. He hovered around the house, inspecting things as though it were his own. He criticized Anna for leaving dishes in the sink, for folding the laundry the wrong way, even for letting Sophia watch cartoons. When Sophia accidentally left a light on, he scolded her in front of her mother. Max barked, stepping forward protectively, and Ryan's jaw tightened. "One day, that dog will bite the wrong person," he muttered. One rainy morning, Ryan announced casually at breakfast, "Anna had to leave town. Her mother in Florida is very ill." Sophia froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. "That's not true," she said before she could stop herself. Ryan's eyes sharpened and his voice dropped low. "Are you calling me a liar?" Sophia's lips trembled. "Her coat and boots are still here," she whispered. Ryan leaned close, his face inches from hers. "You don't question me. Do you understand?" Max leapt between them, snarling, his teeth bared. For a moment, Sophia thought Ryan might strike the dog, but instead he forced a smile and leaned back. "You'll see. She'll call soon." He said it with false confidence, but sweat shone faintly on his temple. Sophia retreated upstairs, clutching her notebook. She wrote furiously, recording every detail. Ryan's lie, her mother's missing presence, Max's growl. She tucked the notebook into Max's bed under the loose fabric, whispering, "If anything happens, you'll keep it safe." That afternoon, when Ryan left for what he called a business meeting, Sophia knew it was her chance. Max followed her to the shed, where she dragged out the old aluminum ladder. The metal screeched against the damp ground, but she gritted her teeth and heaved it toward the side of the house. Max paced beside her, barking once as though in protest, but she shook her head. "We have to know." The climb was terrifying. Her small hands gripped the cold rungs, her shoes slipping slightly on the wet metal. She tried not to look down, but the ground seemed to sway beneath her. Max barked anxiously from below, circling the ladder, whining as she climbed higher. Her heart pounded in her ears, but determination pushed her on. At last, she pulled herself onto the sloping roof, the shingles slick with rain. She crawled carefully on her hands and knees, Max scrambling up behind her with surprising agility. The chimney rose like a red brick tower, darkened by years of soot. As Sophia approached, she noticed something glinting in the weak sunlight near the base. She reached out with trembling fingers and picked it up. It was a locket, a small golden pendant in the shape of a sun, the same one her mother had worn every day since Michael's passing. Sophia's breath caught. She pressed it to her chest, tears filling her eyes. "It's hers," she whispered to Max. Her hands shaking, Sophia pressed her ear against the rough bricks. At first there was only silence, then a faint, wheezing breath, so fragile it might have been mistaken for the wind. She gasped, pulling back, then pressed closer again. "Mom?" she whispered desperately. There was a faint moan, weak but unmistakable. Sophia's entire body trembled. She staggered back, staring wide-eyed into the dark gap where a loose brick had shifted. For a moment she thought she saw hair, a shoulder, and then eyes. Her mother's eyes, half open, glazed with pain, but alive. The scream that tore from Sophia's chest was unlike anything she had ever made before. It was primal, raw, echoing across the quiet street. "Mom! She's here! Somebody help! My mom is in the chimney!" Her voice cracked, but she screamed again and again, tears streaming down her face. Max added his own voice, barking furiously, his paws scraping at the bricks as though trying to tear them apart himself. Across the street, a neighbor heard the cries. Mr. Thomas Johnson, a retired postman in his 70s, had been tending to his rose bushes despite the drizzle. He was a thin man with white hair combed neatly back, his face lined with years of hard work but softened by kind gray eyes. At first, he thought the noise was children playing, but the desperation in Sophia's cries made his heart pound. He looked up, and his breath caught. The girl was on the roof, clutching a dog, screaming toward the chimney. "Good Lord," he muttered, dropping his clippers and hurrying toward the fence. "Sophia! Get down from there before you fall!" But Sophia didn't stop. Her hands beat against the bricks, her face wet with tears. "She's in here! Please help. My mom is trapped." Mr. Johnson's face paled. His instincts told him this was no childish game. His trembling hands pulled his old flip phone from his pocket, dialing 911. "There's a child on the roof at 215 Maple Street," he said, voice shaking. "She's screaming her mother is trapped in the chimney. I don't know what's happening, but please send help now." As he spoke, Ryan's car turned onto the street. He stopped short at the sight. Sophia perched on the roof, Max barking, Mr. Johnson on the phone, his face drained of color, then twisted with fury. He slammed the car door and stormed forward, his voice a roar. "Sophia, get down this instant!" But Sophia's fear turned to defiance. She screamed louder, her small hands pounding the chimney. "You locked her in here! You lied! Somebody help!" Ryan froze, his face flickering between rage and panic. Mr. Johnson stepped in front of him, holding the phone like a weapon. "I've called the police," he said, his voice firmer than his frail body looked. Ryan forced a laugh. "She's delusional. The kid's been a mess since Anna left. Don't listen to her." But even as he spoke, the sound of sirens pierced the air, growing louder. Sophia collapsed against Max, sobbing with exhaustion but still screaming whenever she could. The German shepherd stood tall beside her, barking at the flashing lights racing toward them. And in that moment, for the first time since her father's death, Sophia felt a spark of hope that someone finally believed her. The shriek of sirens split the Portland drizzle, red and blue lights cutting through the gray afternoon. Sophia clung to Max on the slippery roof, her small body trembling, but she refused to stop shouting. Neighbors began to gather on porches and sidewalks, murmuring anxiously. The street, normally quiet and unremarkable, had turned into the stage of something extraordinary. The first police car screeched to a halt. Sergeant Daniel Ward stepped out, his boots splashing in puddles. He was in his mid-40s, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair streaked with gray, and eyes that had seen too many scenes like this one. His calm, steady presence carried authority, the kind that reassured even in chaos. He scanned the scene quickly, the girl on the roof screaming for her mother, the large dog guarding her, the older neighbor with a phone still in his hand, and a man at the curb, Ryan, whose face twitched with panic. "Everyone stay back," Ward ordered firmly, waving neighbors away as he approached the house. He looked up at Sophia, softening his tone. "Hey there, I'm Sergeant Ward. You're safe. Can you tell me what's happening?" Sophia's voice cracked but rang with conviction. "My mom! She's inside the chimney. He locked her in there." She pointed at Ryan with a shaking finger. "He lied. Please, you have to help her." Ward turned to Ryan. "Is this true?" Ryan forced a strained smile. "The child is confused. Her mother left town days ago. She's unstable." His voice faltered under the sergeant's gaze. Ward had children of his own. He recognized the raw terror in Sophia's eyes. That wasn't confusion. That was truth. He lifted his radio. "Dispatch, I need fire and rescue at 215 Maple immediately. Possible entrapment, female victim inside chimney." Moments later, a fire engine rumbled onto the street, followed by an ambulance. The fire captain, James O'Reilly, a stout man in his 50s with a thick mustache and a booming voice, stepped out and strode toward Ward. "What have we got?" Ward gestured to Sophia. "Kid says her mother's inside the chimney. She seems certain. Dog's been reacting too." O'Reilly glanced up, cupped his hands around his mouth. "Kid, can you hear her?" Sophia nodded frantically. "She's breathing, but it's weak." "All right, boys, tools up," O'Reilly barked. Two firefighters hauled sledgehammers and crowbars, clambering onto the roof with ropes tied to their harnesses. Max stood protectively by Sophia until a firefighter knelt beside her. "It's okay, sweetheart, we'll take it from here." He was young, freckles across his nose, his voice gentle. He carefully guided Sophia toward the ladder. Max followed, reluctantly, until they were both safely on the ground. Sophia ran straight to Ward, clutching his uniform. "Please, don't let them stop." Ward crouched, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "They won't. We're going to get her out." The first hammer blow rang like thunder against the bricks. Pieces crumbled, soot puffed into the air. Neighbors gasped as firefighters worked furiously, smashing through decades-old mortar. Ryan began to struggle against the officer holding him back. "You can't destroy my house. This is illegal." Ward's eyes turned cold. "It's not your house, Mr. Carter. And you're not going anywhere." Ryan tried to laugh it off, but sweat dripped down his temple. Then came the cry, "I see her!" A firefighter's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a frail figure crammed inside. "She's alive! Get the stretcher ready!" Cheers and gasps rippled through the crowd. Within minutes, Anna Miller was pulled from the chimney, her clothes tattered, skin pale and smudged with soot. Her body was gaunt from days without food, lips cracked, but her chest still rose faintly with breath. The paramedics rushed forward, laying her onto a stretcher, attaching oxygen tubes. "Mom!" Sophia cried, breaking free from Ward's arms. She stumbled toward the stretcher, Max bounding beside her. Anna's eyelids fluttered at the sound of her daughter's voice. Her dull eyes slowly focused, and for the first time in days, they lit up. "Sophia," she whispered, barely audible. A weak smile spread across her lips. "My hero." Sophia grabbed her mother's grimy hand, sobbing. "I found you. I didn't stop." Tears streaked her soot-stained cheeks as paramedics lifted the stretcher into the ambulance. Max whined, pressing his head against Anna's side until the doors closed. Ward turned sharply to Ryan, who stood slack-jawed. "Ryan Carter," he said coldly, "you are under arrest for kidnapping and attempted murder." The officer snapped cuffs around Ryan's wrists. For a moment, the man's confident facade crumbled, his eyes darting wildly. "You don't understand. She wanted to be in there. She's sick." But his protests were drowned out by the siren as the ambulance sped away. As Ryan was shoved into the back of a patrol car, Ward ordered detectives to begin searching the property. "Turn this place inside out," he instructed. Within an hour, they uncovered more than anyone expected. In the basement, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, they found a locked metal box. Inside lay several fake passports with Ryan's photo, stacks of SIM cards, and a black ledger filled with names and numbers. Each name was a woman, each number a dollar amount. In the garage, another discovery chilled the officers. Behind an old tool cabinet was a false wall, and inside, shelves stacked with handbags, jewelry, cell phones, and driver's licenses. Ward lifted one wallet. Inside was the ID of a college student reported missing months earlier. He swallowed hard. "This isn't just kidnapping," he muttered. "This man's a predator. Notify the FBI." Meanwhile, Sophia was taken by a kind-faced paramedic, Linda Perez, a woman in her 30s with dark curly hair and soft brown eyes. She crouched beside Sophia in the back of the ambulance. "Your mom's strong. She's fighting. And you," she smiled gently, "you may have just saved her life." Sophia clung to Max, who licked her hand as though to reassure her. At the hospital, Anna stabilized under the care of doctors. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. The girl on the roof had been telling the truth, and her courage had saved not only her mother, but potentially many others. Mr. Johnson, the neighbor who had called 911, sat on his porch that evening staring at the flashing lights still circling the Miller home. His hands shook slightly, but there was pride in his eyes. "That little girl," he whispered to himself, "she's braver than all of us." When Sergeant Ward later visited the hospital, he found Sophia curled in a chair beside her mother's bed, Max lying protectively at her feet. Anna's hand rested weakly over Sophia's. Ward bent down, his voice warm. "You did good, Sophia. You're a true hero." She blinked up at him, eyes still wide with exhaustion but steady. I couldn't let her go." In the weeks that followed, Ryan's trial would reveal the full extent of his crimes. The ledger connected him to a trafficking ring that stretched beyond Oregon. But for Anna and Sophia, the focus was on healing. Their community, once distant, rallied around them. Neighbors brought meals, offered support, and raised funds for them to move into a new home. Max was celebrated as a hero, too. His photo appeared in the local paper, his amber eyes shining with loyalty. The darkest days of their lives had nearly destroyed them, but in the end, courage, loyalty, and the bond between a girl and her dog brought them into the light. In the end, this story reminds us that even in the darkest chimney of despair, a light can still break through. Sophia's courage, Max's loyalty, and the sudden help from neighbors were not just coincidences. They were small miracles, whispers of God's presence reminding us that we are never truly alone. Sometimes, God sends his protection not through angels with wings, but through the bark of a faithful dog, the cry of a brave child, or the hand of a neighbor who finally listens. In our daily lives, we may not face a villain like Ryan, but we all know moments when fear tries to silence us, when we are tempted to ignore the pain of others, or when we forget to trust in the unseen hand guiding us. This story calls us back to faith, to courage, and to compassion. Miracles are still alive around us, if only we dare to look. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope is real. Leave your thoughts in the comments, tell us where you are watching from, and if you believe God still works miracles today, write Amen below. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that lift your spirit, and may the Lord bless you with peace, safety, and unshakable faith. Amen.